my journey into the NHS started with wanting to do physiotherapy. So in India, my grandparents started off many years ago. They started off a non-government organization in central India, which helped street children, orphan children, um, women in problems, helping them out. Polio was a big problem. Post-polio, the side effects of polio, and kids having disabilities, physical disabilities, and there was not as much of physiotherapy at the time in India, and there wasn't as many colleges with a degree course either. So a lot of physios who were practicing physio were diploma holders. Anyway, I provoked my interest. The organization is funded by Save the Children Fund. I was lucky. I met Princess Anne. She came to the organization, saw the work, and provided some funding to set up a physiotherapy unit. So that provoked interest. And then I did not have a master's specialism to pursue in India because physiotherapy is a new subject. Then I looked at universities. Because the funding was coming from UK, I was looking at UK. And I was very excited and motivated when I saw NHS workers, blue lanyards and uniforms, and that really always was a big dream for me to go and work in the NHS. That was my objective. As with most migrants coming from the Indian peninsula, it was a case of let's go. It's going to be very rosy out there, land where the sun never sets, this kind of stuff from movies you pick up and all that. I wanted to go, learn, do my master's, work for a period in the NHS, and sort of manage the organization in India as well. So I worked for a bit in India in that organization, came over to do my master's. Then I sort of got fixated with this idea. I need to work. And then the work permit was a journey, getting a work permit, studying. I managed to secure a job. I was doing some part-time work in a group of care homes for people with learning disabilities. And because I was a physiotherapist, I was doing some physiotherapy as well, got my registration. And they actually offered me employment. They said, why can't you work full-time when you finish your master's? So I ended up working in the private sector first, and as I was working as a physio, I was doing additional management courses, healthcare management courses, and I ended up managing learning disabilities, mental health, and forensic services. It was a group of care homes. But then it still didn't satisfy my dream of wearing the blue lanyard. But then my curiosity and my dream pushed me. I said I need to try the other side. So health and social care. I was on the social care sector, private sector. I needed to come into core health because I was doing a lot of management. So applied for a band 6 NHS job in learning disabilities, and I secured a position. So that was my first. This is 2013. So I joined the NHS as a fresh band 6 physio with no previous NHS experience. So, and that's where my NHS entry was, 2013 as a band 6 physio. I definitely had difficult times in the process of this journey from 2003. Initially, I wouldn't recognize it because the drive, the objective of settlement, and the emotion behind wanting to settle down, and the emotion which is also there's factors such as taking a student loan in India. When you convert rupees to pounds, the objective of wanting to settle, the objective of getting a job, your dream job, sort of takes over subtle issues of racism, or it could be direct, sometimes it could be indirect. My first experience was where I was a bit shocked was we went into, students, you come here as a group. There was a group of Indian students. We went into the pub. This was in Stoke-on-Trent. Went into the pub and we had to write on the board. We had to write on the board to play, I think it was pool. You have to write names. So I put my name at the bottom of the list. But then when my turn comes, somebody just came and they started playing. I said, "This is not your local pub." I'm like, "Go to your local pub." And I thought somebody was joking. I said, "I'm not from here. I'm from India. If I have to go to my local pub, I have to go to India." I said, "Yeah, bugger off then," sort of a thing. We were like shocked. We thought, "Is this happening?" We just walked out. And then there was reluctance to go to pubs. And then when we were chatting to the student unions, and they said, "These things can happen. Just be careful when you go in groups and so on." So that initial rosy picture of, hey, great student life, UK, it was a bit of a shock. But we thought, okay, things happen. Every city has its problems, so accepted it. And like I said, my objective was something else, so brushed it off. Then happens in the university, we had a professor who would correct our English. So South Indian, now my English, how I speak now, is nowhere close to how I used to speak when I first come. Because it was all with a South Indian accent. So I had friends who would say, on a physiotherapy plinth where we examine people, for instance, as an example, we need to change the sheets. We used to use towels. So somebody would say, we need to change the towel. And the professor used to say, it's not a towel, it's a towel. I said, okay, we'll learn. Maybe she's just correcting because, there are free sessions within the university to improve your English. So I thought passing your English exam to come into the country and in the university having those comments is fine. We just took it very normal. But then this went on. Somebody said, there was stress on syllables, and in Indian accent they would say world. I say it's not world, it's world. But then I started thinking, well, this is Stoke-on-Trent. Without being disrespectful, it started getting me to think, if how you say towel or towel, it's not a proper noun, is wrong, why is it not isn't it in Stoke-on-Trent? How is "int it" or "don't it" correct? Now, I couldn't say this because it's my professor. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to flunk my exam if I. So that, as time went on, I thought this is actually a dig at Indian students. This is actually, I thought I was being cynical. But then I learned after a few months that somebody had actually complained. So I was convinced, yes, there's something going on. It's not just local to an organization, something beyond, something broader, I don't know if white supremacy or something, or the acceptance of somebody from another country is not, subconsciously an easy thing for locals. That's what I felt. But again, my objective kept me driven. My objective was, I need to finish my master's, I need to get my job, my blue lanyard. So that was my strength, hidden strength. But if I was somebody perhaps with settlement in the UK, that would have really got to me or put me off perhaps. In the beginning, they were so desperate because the specialism that I am in, learning disabilities, out of a registered cohort of about 70,000 physiotherapists in the country who are registered, licensed to practice physios, there's only about 350, around 350 physios who practice in learning disabilities for the entire, that's England, Scotland, Wales, on the register. So I chose the specialism because I had a connect with learning disabilities with the organization in India. So it was high demand. So I was like, I was lucky that I worked in the private sector and I already had an exposure to management. So my presentation was good. My interview was good. They really wanted me. I was very well supported because I was the workhorse. As a six, there was 2 band 7s and I was a band 6. I was the workhorse and I like a complex case. So it was for my learning. I used to ask, okay, where can I help you? Where's my caseload? Who's next? What next? What's my next task? But then it come to the point where there was peer supervisions. I would meet with other groups within the trust. So I'm a band 6 in one area in the trust. There's another band 6 in another area who's a white local. I learned in time that the other band 6 became a band 7. Now, there was no advertisement for this, and we're talking 2014, 15. I'm like, I would have applied for this job. Where was this advertised? And I learned that it was ring fenced to locally, and it was a secondment, and this person became a band 7. Now, I was a band 6 under two band 7s who were two part-time band 7s, and they resigned. Not resigned, they retired and left. Um, one of the band 7s stayed on for a bit longer, so we ended up with me a band 6 and one band 7. So there is still another band 7 missing, and I'm like, I could do that. I want to do that band 7, but they did not fill the post. All that second band 7's work was being diverted to me. So not by my colleague band 7, but by senior management. A bit of hierarchical, automatic, I would say, how I sensed it. This is it's automatic assumption that, oh, Abhi's a workhorse, he's gonna do it. Because I've had clean record of 100% patient feedback, for instance, and I had awards within the trust of good work, lots of thank you cards. So it's like, Abhi can handle that. So it almost seemed like for a business model, there was money being saved, a band 7 part-time salary, when so instead of two band 7s, a band 6 and a band 7 can carry on. So until the point where, because I was not interacting directly with senior manager, I was interacting with the band 7, I'm a band 6 interacting with the band 7, I sort of did a rough business case to say, look, it's actually affecting quality of work. We need that band 7, be it to research, be it to, peer review pathways, peer review systems, and clinical research, things like that. I miss that. Can I do some of it? Can I be doing half of my hours band 7 so I can have the protected time, because band 7s have protected time to do research. Then they said, we'll have to look at the job description. So I'm like, why do you need to look at the job description when there is an existing one? Because all I'm looking at is a band 7 job description. I'm a band 6. I need to match my skill set to the band 7 and say, look, I'm competent in these areas. I need to do a learning needs analysis. Certain areas I may not be competent because I'm a band 6, but I've actually found out that because I worked in the private sector, I was matching all the skill set, including managing staff, conflict management, crisis management, complaint management, compliance policy, all this kind of stuff. So I said, look, I already have the skill set. I should try it. No, we need to look at the job description. So then they added social work on it, because we were an integrated team. We were a health and social care team. So they started putting duty social work on it. And they did give me the band 7 because, my business case was strong enough. But they would not hire a band 6. Now, I'm a band 6 wanting a band 7. So when I took the band 7, there's no band 6. So I was still doing the band 6 work and the band 7 work. And they would extend my contract by 3 months. So let's see how you perform for 3 months. So you perform. They would extend another 3 months. So that went on for about 2 years. Until because I was managing before, I knew employment law, and my wife is a HR advisor. So having a chat with her, she said, it's getting to the point where this can be illegal to just keep extending your contract. Raise it as an informal concern, because I don't like, I believe that as humans, we can talk, negotiate, agree, disagree, and then it should be, when it's a disagreement, then perhaps a complaint. So I'm always a negotiator, which was part of my management skill. So when I tried to negotiate, it was like, oh, you need to do duty social work. You need to be I'm like, my previous band 7 did not need to do social work, and it's not within my professional remits. Helping somebody because you know how to is different, but embracing an additional task in my job description wasn't acceptable. So this went on, and I went to HR to say, look, I want to raise an informal concern. I do feel oppressed because my job is being held. And they immediately got around and said, well, you can't. You got to decide. This was to senior management. HR said, you got to decide. And within a week after that, I had a permanent contract. So that only tells me that had I not raised this, they would have just played on this 3-month extending. And you can imagine, for 2 years, I'm not sure if I'm going to have a secure job. I'm not sure if I'm performing, because it's always related to in supervision. Let's see how you get on with it. if you're doing well, we'll give you an extension. I'm like, no, that's not right. Whereas my white colleague, who was the band 6, she just got given an automatic band 7. How did that happen? So a few years later, the same repeats again. So we both band 7s. The other band 7, my we get on really well. But the speed at which she rose from a 6 to band 7 and a band 8 this time, at an operational level, and I wasn't aware of the advertisement. So she rose to a band 8. I'm like, when was this advertised? I could have applied for it because I do have the skills in the person specification. I have those skills 6 years ago, not now, because I've done management before. And oh, it's just a secondment. Oh, I would have applied for the secondment. And then there was the scheme. Things got better. There was the Allied Health Professions into Action agenda, which come NHS England agenda, which was to do with promoting allied health professions, because there's more nurses as managers in the NHS than there is physios or occupational therapists. So all the managers and everybody were very hot with the agenda for allied health professions. Now, within this agenda, there is also the agenda for BAME staff who are allied health professions. Nobody knew about this NHS policy. So I actually it's basically saying the statistics speak for themselves. You have fewer allied health professions as managers, so we need to promote them. So my colleague white band 7 becomes a band 8. I'm still floating as a 7, although I have the skills. But in the policy, there's also very strong focus from NHS England about what are you doing with ethnic minority allied health professions? Are they still in those band 5, band 6s, or are they having the opportunity to progress and rise? Because the evidence says that there isn't enough push on ethnic minorities. So until I quoted this policy, there was no progression for me. But I had to sort of reverse mentor. It's coming up in NHS Trust. I had to reverse mentor up onto all the way up to the board to say, look, this is what NHS England policy is. What are we doing locally? So I had to shout out nicely, again, negotiate, not a complaint. And then they put me on a funded program for an advanced clinical practice. Again, it's like the phrase, you're given a carrot to chase. So I have to do this advanced clinical practice to aspire to be an 8A, whereas my colleague is already an 8A. So my journey continues. So that is like, is it indirect or is it, I'm confused there in terms of, I'm not sure this is going right. But again, my objective of wanting to make things happen, at the end of the day, how I see it positively is I'm going to do an advanced clinical practice. I'm going to do some research. Let's do that. I'm in a better place because I carry on doing my band 7. I've got time for study. I don't have the pressures of an 8 responsibility. Let me enjoy it for a couple of years and see. So I know I'll get a band 8, but from my journey from 6 to 8 is not as smooth as it is for a colleague. As much as I think I was building emotional resilience because my ultimate goal is still success, career, and all that, keeps me driven, but I felt dejected. I felt like a reject. It's like less privileged, I would say. Whatever you do, even with 100% feedback, I've not had. I probably had a day in of sickness. I would find a way if I can work. If it's a headache, if I can't be at work, of course, if it's not safe, I wouldn't be. I had very good credentials, very good feedback, not been off sick as much. And still, it feels how much ever hard you work, it's still a tough journey. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of ignorance. For example, one of the policy that I quoted about BAME staff as AHPs, even the board was not sure about what I was talking about. So, but they were sure of the allied health profession policy because it applies to more generic population and everybody. But when I talk about ethnic minorities as AHPs and there's an actual policy, oh, when did that come out? Sort of thing. I'm like, okay, why are you not aware of it? So it baffles me. Although things are improving, I would say things are a lot better than they were when I first started, when I first come to the country. I think awareness is required. It makes me feel less important. When the pandemic started and lockdown happened, obviously everything was a freeze. I would say I was working in a community service, especially I think any community um, workforce are not seen as an emergency workforce. So because I'm not an emergency workforce and I'm not working in the acute sector, it was a lockdown basically. No, there was no visits um, to see patients. But with me being a clinician, and for example, we work with nurses, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, um, a psychiatrist, but a lot of the other professions are not as much hands on as a physiotherapist. Me being a physiotherapist, I can't do a virtual consultation other than about checking the range of movement of a shoulder or something. But you got to touch, feel, and treat. So I was the first one to establish the need to open clinic. So I needed my clinic up and running for my patients. Now we use a base which is rented by the council, and the base does not belong to the council. So the council is renting this from one NHS trust, but we are employed by a second NHS trust. So base belongs to one NHS trust where the clinic is. The workers working in there is another NHS trust, but who is managing us is the council. So there's three organizations. Now, who in a crisis would sign off the risk assessment for the clinic? Because the base will say, well, you're the ones treating, you go to that trust, I'll speak to the risk team there. So the other trust is saying, well, you're managed by the council, let the council health officer sign off the paperwork. And the council health officer is saying, well, we're not responsible for the premises. The premises should estates manager to sign it off. So there's this trilogy of bouncing the risk assessment. In the end, I had to speak to my professional body. I am the clinician. I know my patient. I am the one treating. I know my environment. Can I sign the risk assessment? So my professional body said yes, sign off the risk assessment. So I signed it off and sent it. Again, it was going in circles. So until the point where there was a point where NHS trusts and communities were doing only the most essential visits during lockdown, and then it came out to necessary visits. It changed the terminology, I think, in each area. So when things became necessary visits to go ahead, where everybody else needed to open up, the other professions, things moved a bit faster. So my paper document, which is going around, my risk assessment, got signed off quicker. So it became a priority when there was others requesting similar. Now I don't know if I'm overthinking this or that I felt alone. I basically felt alone that who's going to sign my paperwork? Who's responsible? Where is the agreement between these three organizations? So if it wasn't for my own initiative, that clinic would not have opened. It would have, I would have had patients just waiting. I felt vulnerable. I'm the only one opening up, and I felt I might make, if I make a mistake or if I've not thought through something that's written in small print in, I don't know, health education, not health education, in uh, um, HSE, I think, Health and Safety Executive England, if there's something I missed. So I was stressed. I was thinking I could do with help here. Who can write this for me? And I was more comfortable thinking perhaps I could countersign this risk assessment rather than be the only signatory. So yeah, I felt a bit vulnerable there. I'm the first one to open clinic. If anything happens, it's going to come back heavy on me saying I made a mistake, I'd be disciplined or something. So with an unblemished career and messing it up around the pandemic. But yeah, well, I'm up and running now. So I'm the first one in my area to have opened up clinic, and everybody else followed suit. Oh, Abhi's done that. Let's follow the same format. I had to emotionally and in terms of negotiation. I don't know if fight is professionally debate. fight is an appropriate word, to get secure my job. Then there's this band-aid thing that's gone on. I couldn't go from 7 to an 8, so I've got my advanced clinical practice, a lot going on. And then these micro triggers sort of, they fall valet to it's just drain of energy. So I'm thinking on the bigger picture. Let me get my advanced clinical practice done. Let me get to my 8A. And perhaps when I'm in a position that I can influence better in senior management role, I can actually give reflections of my story and make sure that my colleagues or people I manage don't go through the same journey. I've started a couple of things of reverse mentoring, and then reaching out to the board saying, can you just come and spend a day with me? So they've actually um, listened there, and they've come and seen what I go through the day, so they can appreciate work, and then relate to senior managers to say, actually, you need to consider giving this person some space, let him get on with stuff, and not take things for granted, maybe. So yeah, I gave in initially and I spoke out, but there will still be times where I probably will just give in, to that kind of indirect, or whether it is discrimination, I'm not too sure, but I think sometimes it could be done in a naively. It's inherent and culturally embedded, I feel sometimes, that they don't recognize this happens. I wanted to go out and work. I wanted clinic open. I was fed up of being at home and there's so little you can do. There was a sense of guilt conscious of, I'm not seeing patients. What will I do working from home? I know government is saying work from home where possible, but as a physio, there was less than 50% I was actually doing something productive. So I escalated it to say, look, I've got pockets of time, and I was getting some admin stuff, managerial kind of work, but not physio. Initially, I was scared because there was issues with PPE. Some PPE, when I put it on, felt flimsy, a cheap, very cheap quality. I mean, something I bought off on Amazon would probably be a lot more fit and would stay on me like the shield. So we had to send a few things back. We had goggles, for instance, which were basically shades, pound for two kind of a shades, without disrespect. And one of my colleagues actually said, I'm not using it, and wrote to the infection control team, and they condemned them, but I was using it. So there was like, maybe I was thinking, is it my fault? I should have, when I felt, I could have probably said, but I'm thinking we would be issued PPE, which is quality checked anyway. So if something is coming to me, I don't expect it to be faulty, especially PPE in a sealed bag. It's not like a moving and handling piece of kit where you do a check before you put it on. It's like you're working in speed. You put your gloves, get your kit on, then you should be ready to treat. So then when they condemned some of the PPE, I'm like, I've been working with this PPE and I've not been vaccinated. And the slightest cough or cold, I think that's it now. You're scared. But I don't know if there was any malice. I think a lot of trust went through that issue with PPE. But yeah, I was raring to go back, and we're in a better place now. Because there was a lot of people working from home, I felt that some of the senior managers, they had no travel time, so they were not traveling to these, doing these long, an hour and a half, 2 hour journeys to get to a meeting for 1 hour and then drive back for an hour, hour and a half. That was not happening because everything was happening on Zoom. Suddenly, there's this pocket of time that senior managers have, and they needed to fill it with, what do we do next? So that then rolled down, I feel, to let's just audit everything. Let's look at calendars. I mean, I'm an autonomous practitioner at Band 7. I have a caseload, self-manage. And then to look at calendar of, every half an hour, is it accounted for? It takes about an hour if I were to write down every call that I made during a given hour, to patients. So that got a bit extreme of, how much do you want to, is there a policy on this? Is there anywhere written, yes, we need our start time, finish time, how many people we've seen? There's nothing written. It's almost idea which floated somewhere, and people want to calendar surf and send you screenshots of why have we got a gap there, why have we got a gap here. It was very superficial um, calendar, sort of micromanaging check. If I was manager, I would not just look at the face value of the calendar. I would go into the notes. I would ask for phone logs. I would ask for any paper records, signing in, signing out. I would check all this preliminary stuff of what this individual is being doing, and then establish whether I need to check the calendar. As long as it's a start, there's no policy around it. We moved from paper records to electronic, so people were getting used to calendars. It's not like there was as much scrutiny before. And suddenly with pandemic, there's all this time senior managers have and started sending screenshots of calendars. As it is, it's very unnerving. I'm the first one going out into clinics. And then all this additional scrutiny is not the appropriate time needed, I suppose. The objective here is patient care. Are we back to normalcy? Is patient care being affected? That should be the objective. Not because there's time, we will just start auditing random stuff. That was, as it is, it's quite tense to go out and treat in that atmosphere. I'm the first one doing clinics. And then to have all this additional behind the scenes paperwork because others are working from home, is stress not needed? It built my resilience, but I felt it's unnecessary. They could have done better. I think, be it the PPE crisis in the initial stages, and vigilance, I think, was poor, especially in the acute sector. I think there was a lot of nursing staff who really were left to it. Shifts, some of the shifts when I go into acute, when I go in for discharge, going to the acute sectors, I see this complete shade of minority staff. So I'm like, where's the local staff? And deployment perhaps could have been looked into because ethnic minorities are more at risk with the pandemic. On a general scale, PP management wasn't great. Then for ethnic minorities, I think deployment of staff should have been more. There's lesser ethnic minorities in the NHS, but more deployment on the hard front line of ethnic minorities. So although there's a lesser proportion of people from different countries, they're the ones more deployed more on the hard front line. Behind the scene managers are more of the locals. So I think that balance perhaps could have been looked at by senior management. It needs to be proportional. So perhaps it needs to be, I don't know if it's a 10 to 90 ratio. Deployment could be maybe 20 to 90, 20 to 80, but not minorities being 80 and 20% of others. So vigilance, so those are kind of things perhaps needed audit. Those are kind of things perhaps not needed, taken for granted that, let them get on with it. And feedback, I think they could have taken more feedback from workers on the front do you feel supported enough? They've done risk assessments, but is it a tick box paper exercise, or actually do you mean to act on it? I'm not sure. There's been the general awareness, I suppose, when all the social media kicked off and George Floyd's incident happened. There's all this sudden alertness, but then it fades, and it almost feels like, should it need that great an incident to recognize it? To eradicate. How long is it going to take? Is always an emotional worry for me. If not my generation, will perhaps the next generation see change? Change is happening, but around this particular George Floyd situation, there wasn't a flyer, or we had the silence. I think one occasion we had a 2-minute silence, and that was it. There's no further discussion. There'll be email communication sent to everybody. If you're black or ethnic minority, you could tap into this resource. I think there has to be a lot more reverse mentoring. I think there has to be people need to come out of boardrooms. People need to lead by example. People need to do those odd weekend Sunday shifts, feel the pressure. Not just here, oh, we've listened to you, we've heard to you. No, come work with us. Don't just listen to us. Come work alongside, and we will audit you. So everything that you preach, say, should has to happen for quality. For instance, look at the board. There would be a nurse, or there would be a clinician who's actually in the board, but they've been in the board for about 5, 10 years or worked in another trust. They've not been part of the practical frontline workforce working. They're looking at policy theory, but the practical on-floor situation might be different. So for the minority worker, unless somebody in senior management comes and works alongside them or actually does their shift or part of it and be scrutinized in a similar way, they don't feel it. I don't think they can hear you, but you need to hear with emotion and face that situation. That's why I invited one of my board's members to say, come and see what we do. And he was gobsmacked. He was like, wow, what an amazing job. And within that mix, if you start throwing in audits and throwing additional stuff, which is not, which not all of it is a professional body requirement. When things are fine and and we're keeping our own regular audits, we don't need additional audits. So he was appreciative of it. So that tells me that if there is reverse mentoring and start at the grassroots level, start with your cleaning staff, start with your estate staff, not just a virtual phone call, go and do a shift. I'm sure you have the time because you don't have the travel times anymore. With the positives on COVID is there's no as many meetings to travel to. So that time needs to be, how is that time being managed is something we don't know. So listen to, we probably need an additional member of staff on shift rather than agency dependency. So if you're a nurse and I've got a waiting list, and I've got a nursing waiting list, please come and pick up that caseload opposed to telling us you have a huge nursing waiting list. What are you doing about it? Why are you not recruiting agency? I'm sure you can make the time, have a day in a month perhaps, come lead by example. I feel senior management will understand better if they do that. And I feel accountability is lesser in terms of professional accountability when somebody is a clinician but they're doing management. They don't have as much professional accountability to their professional body unless they're seeing a patient. So it could be a bit, how to say, taken for granted that we expect all this from you because the policies have changed, because the national agendas have changed. So we expect all this from the clinician, the board can say. But in practical application of that theory, is the business needing met with the resources, or is the worker actually overworking himself? You can't evaluate that unless you do it yourself. So when there is no accountability when there is no accountability which affects your registration, then at board level or senior management level, their mistakes are like not, there's no repercussion to a mistake. Oh, we've done that. It didn't work. Let's try something differently. I can't say that with my patient because I'll straight away go on to a capability. If I do something, if I do a trial and error, I can't do that. So that's it. I think for change, they have to come down onto the floor. Enough of this boardroom presence and remote talking. Come, work with us, spend a day, then decide on what you want to apply as a policy. Change, I think, is a slow, gradual process. We need more clinicians, and the balance of ethnic minorities at senior management board level needs to balance out more, and that'll help change, I think.